we'll get to you in 1 second. And I didn't even get to talk to Penny yet. I know, one hour. I told you to talk to her. She's somehow related to Fran. She knows stuff. I told them. Did anybody talk to him? While we're there. Folks, if you please sit down. We've got some seats over here that are unoccupied. We'd like to get this program started. Hello, folks. You can sit down and take it down. Thank Hey, sit down. Okay. To be president, you don't have to have a large voice like mine, but at times it really helps. Thank you. Bev, floor is yours.
Hey, well, everyone. So in our club, a lot of us do a lot of different adventures. And this time I'm hiking with Dana, and she's telling me about this bike and barge adventure that she went on. And I thought, one, it sounds unique. Haven't done that kind of thing before. And would you like to do a presentation on it? And so she got together she went with a whole bunch of people. And Kathy here is the major planner on it. And they got together and decided to do a presentation for us. So this is something for all of us to learn about, bike and barge in the Netherlands. Let's give them a warm welcome.
Okay. I think I have to hit, right? Oops, is it on? Hello? Hi.
Hi.
We can hear you good. Okay, thanks everyone. Well, this is my first time with coming to the solar group, and I'm impressed. You guys do a lot of really fun, cool things. So thank you for having me, and I'm here to share with you about our bike and barge presentation. And I'll tell you that me and one of my dear friends, Beth Kish, and I don't know if any of you have heard that name before, but her and I actually have been talking about doing a bike and barge trip for a long time, and we wanted to actually charter the barge so that we could take some of our closest friends with us and have the whole barge all to ourselves. So that's what we did. We started venturing down that path, and so that's what we're going to talk about today. My name is Kathy Joseph, and Beth could not be here today, unfortunately for you and for me, but for her, she's in Vienna, so she's having a good time. And then you guys all know Dana. She was on the trip as well. And so we're going to both tag team on this and talk about what we did to charter the boat and then the trip itself all the way through. So let's begin.
And if you have any questions,
Yes.
just share it. We'd like the interaction. So
Yes, please ask questions along the way. Happy to answer anything, and love to have it more interactive than just listening to us up here. So, okay, so this is what we're going to talk about, really, the barge selection, what we did to, how did we pick the barge and the location and where we wanted to go. So talking about that a little bit, a high-level process flow from start to finish, what we did. In order to gauge interest from our friends, which was not very hard, I must say. The barge details, what the size of the barge and the, meals, accommodations, the bike rentals, because we did every single one of us rented bikes while we were there, of course. And then the actual ride. We did select going through the Netherlands. We started actually in Bruges, which is in Brussels. Is in Belgium, I'm sorry. So we started in Bruges and we ended up in Amsterdam. So that was the route we chose. And one of the reasons why we chose that route was because of the diversity of bike riders that we had. Some were very seasoned bike riders. Some were not as seasoned bike riders, but they loved to bike ride. So It just decided to go by itself. So we wanted a flat area to bike ride through. So unlike some other areas that, are more hilly. And then some of the successes and challenges that we faced along the way. And if there's anything else you want to hear about, of course, we're happy to talk about that as well. So during the barge selection, we looked at 3 companies, which are listed here. But I will say that we were really slanted, and we only did a cursory look at 2 of the organizations, only because we've had more exposure to the 3rd company, which was Cycle Tours. And the reason for that is I had friends of mine who did a charter about 20, 25 years ago, and they talked about how wonderful and how successful it was and how much everybody liked it. And Cycle Tours was still around. So that was, in the huge plus side from that perspective. And then just recently, another set of my friends went over there on their anniversary. They went over to Europe, and part of their trip, they did use Cycle Tours and did the bike and barge. And they loved it as well. So, that was a big driver for us, especially chartering the boat. Knowing that this organization had been around for a long time really helped us lean towards that way. But we did look a little bit at Discovery Bike Tours. That actually was quite pricey. It was almost 3 times as much money. So we decided to kind of nix that almost immediately. And then the boat and bike tours, we looked at that again, just cursory, passed some contact information back and forth, some emails, but Cycle Tours won. And the boat that we selected was called Sailing Home. And one of the reasons why we picked that boat was because after we, gauged the interest, it held the amount of people that we had for the boat. So they had a fleet of 6 different barges. This was their largest barge that held 26 people, but they also have smaller barges that have like 10 people and 20 people, 15 people, things like that. So it's smaller footprint, but so depending on what you're looking for there. So just going over the high level process flow in June is when we started this of 2022. Beth and I got together, we reached out to the companies and, exchanged a lot of emails, looked at contracts. This was a first, I will say, trip that I put on to this magnitude. And just to give you an idea, I think the contract value was, $35,000. So to have to put out that much money without having all the money initially was a little bit scary. But we were very confident after we shot out some emails to individuals, which is what we did in August. We sent emails to approximately 45 of our friends. Dana was one of them. And we picked friends who rode bikes. And it's just anyone who rode bikes that, I'm in the ski club, and we have a lot of bike riders, and some of them are, like I said, more seasonal than others. So it was amazing how quickly people responded yes to being interested in going. So we were pretty happy to see that. But then, being interested and actually committing to going is another thing, right? So in September, we decided to get the deposits before we actually even signed contracts. We figured if we can get deposits, then we knew that interest was truly there. And as soon as that email went out for deposits, we accepted deposits via Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, check, or come into my house. And I had 2 people come to my house and give me a check because they wanted to go and make sure that they were in the trip. So we're pretty happy about the interest level for sure. It was a first come, first served basis, and we did it there. At that point, there were still COVID restrictions in place, so there were some that were on the fence because of that. At that time, you did have to be vaccinated and boosted and take those recommendations with you. So there were some in the club that didn't necessarily meet that criteria or didn't want to do that. So, so we had a number of people who were interested, along with a wait list, to kind of see what was going to happen with COVID. And luckily, that was lifted before we went, so that was a good thing. In October, the first payment was due, and that was, again, we were happy that we collected all those funds ahead of time, but and then in April of 2023, the final payment was due. And then, of course, we had to sign contracts, and that was right before the first payment, was when we had to sign a contract that we would commit to paying for the barge. The other reason why we selected the sailing home was it held 26 people, but we actually only had to pay for 24. So the initial pricing was for 24 people. But if we wanted to completely fill the boat with 26 people, then we would just pay for those 2 extra people. And that was at a lower price part too, so that kind of helped with the overall pricing for everybody.
Did you have to pay for a captain?
The captain was included. What was not included was a tour guide. So if we wanted someone to lead our bike ride, that was not included. But the captain and the chef and the sailor and another individual, which is in here, was all included. So
Did you get a tour guide?
we did, and that was probably one of the best things we did. It really provided us, so it really just allowed us to enjoy the ride. We didn't have to worry about when to have to turn, where do we go next? We hit a roadblock or anything, we had our tour guide, so they recommended it, and we were really glad that we did it. The other thing we did is we created a spreadsheet in Google Docs, which was really helpful. So the bike and barge trip was a week long, and I'll go into the details of that. But we knew a lot of people would want to go early, and a lot of people would want to stay afterwards, because you could go to Bruges and Brussels and Ghent and all those areas there if you wanted to go early, and then afterwards in Amsterdam, of course, that's a very popular place as well. So we created that document so that people could put down their names, their phone numbers, their flight information, hotels that they might be staying at before and after. And that, it really was, it allowed everybody to kind of communicate with each other and maybe make a phone call and say, hey, I see you're doing this, what are you thinking? Things like that. So that was really helpful to share that. We also had a gathering, I think that was like in April or May of 2023, and that was at my house. So all 26 people who attended actually came to my house. We had 2 that were not able to attend, but that was a very, I think Dana will say too, that it was a really good meeting.
Yeah, we could ask a bunch of questions, hey, what about this? What about this? And even really just general questions like, what's it like in Europe? Do I have to worry about getting pickpocketed, stuff like that? So we shared all that with each other.
Yeah, where to buy euros, some of the best places in the area to buy euros if you wanted to get those ahead of time. And so a lot of valuable information was shared back and forth at that meeting. And then a lot of the questions, Beth and I had a lot of, an outline of the details of the trip, but a lot of the questions that they asked that we were not able to answer, we just gathered all those questions and asked the tour company at that point. So we had a, follow up to do there. So that was really good. And then in July, we did bike rentals. That payment was due. If you had any special meals, that was due, and I'll get into that in a little bit. And then on September 9th, that was the day, 2023 was the day we actually got to go on the barge. So we'll talk about that too. So for the boat charter itself, Beth and I were responsible for all the contracts and communication back and forth to the barge. We had to provide them with everything, the name of all of the participants, all the passengers, who they were staying with, the heights and bike types. So they had to know how tall you were so they could, have the correct bike size available. the date of birth, any dietary,
Restrictions?
thank you, that anyone might have. So, and there was a little extra cost for that as well. So included in the price, I will say that the price ended up being about $16.50 per person, and that included everything up at the top. 7 nights and 8 days, and this is right from their website, so it sounds funny that bedding and towels was included, but they were. All our meals were there, so breakfast, an amazing 3-course dinner every night on board, and a packed lunch, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Coffee and tea was included. Weekly programs, road book, and a GPS track. So we were able to download the actual day-by-day trip that we were doing, bike route. And that was really nice because you could actually see where you were going along the river or wherever it may take you from one city to the next. So every day you could actually look and see where we were going. And then it also included tips. So we actually included the tips in there so that nobody had to worry about that part. Not included in the price was the bicycles themselves. So there were 24-speed bicycles, and then you could also rent e-bikes. There's a difference in cost by $100. So it's $100 if you wanted just a 24-speed bike. If you wanted an e-bike, it was $195 for the week. It did include the helmets, the pannier bags, the water bottle, which you got to keep, and a lock. So everything we had every day. And when we got there, our names were on our bikes. So, and they stayed on our bikes, so we knew which bike was ours. And yeah, we just went right to our bikes and started, checking it out from that, taking it for a little ride, make sure it was all the right size and things. So the tour guide, as I mentioned, was an additional cost, and we were very glad that we did that. So I mean, there were times when we had to cross rivers on ferries and other little things that we'll talk about along the way that I think would have really been tough to navigate through, or it wouldn't have probably been tough, but just one less thing we had to worry about. We could enjoy the bike ride. It did not include bike insurance, personal travel insurance, admission tickets, other drinks on boards. So they did have a bar, it was really nice the way it was set up. So a barge is certainly different than a cruise ship. Very, very comfortable. I will say it's very, very comfortable, but it's not that luxury, big, millions of places to go, right? Like here, it's more compact. It's a smaller vessel overall. But they had this little bar area, and if you wanted something to drink, they had beer, they had liquor, soft drinks. It was all on your honor system. You just go behind the bar, get your beer, get whatever you wanted to drink. And then they had cards with your room number on it, and you would just put what you had for that day. And then at the end of the week, you squared up. So it was really nice. You didn't have to worry about paying as you go. You just kept track of it, and it was on your honor system. And then flights, of course, was not included.
Was it like an expensive mini bar, or was it reasonable?
It was very
It's
reasonable.
reasonable, yeah.
Do you remember any of the costs?
4 or 5 euros, I think, for a beer, and these were like, Belgian beer.
And
not
you didn't get
Budweiser.
sticker shock at the end of the week. That's
No.
all
No,
was.
it wasn't. No, I was.
And you could even buy a bottle of wine. So if you wanted a glass of wine, you would just pour your own glass. Or if you wanted to get a whole bottle, then you just have the refrigerator there and you just put it in the refrigerator and hope none of your friends would drink it. Which, the accommodation. So we did have a 4-man crew. There was a captain, a sailor, a chef, and a hostess. That was the other name I couldn't remember. The captain was phenomenal. Obviously he drove the boat, but he also, he gave us a real nice overview of what to expect for the week. He was there to answer any questions. He helped the other crew when they needed it. So they all did multitasking along the way. The sailor helped with, getting the bikes on and off the boat and helping with the food service. the chef was, I mean, there was not one person who had any complaints about the food because it was absolutely phenomenal. We got so lucky, I think, on that. And then the hostess helped with the preparation with the food and the serving and whatnot. So the dinners were sit down dinners, and we'll share a little bit more about that too. There were 13 cabins on the boat. They were underneath, so you had the one level that had the salon, the lounge, the cozy bar, the sun deck, and then below deck, a winding staircase down or some stairs down, had 13 cabins down there. So they were two-person cabins. They were two twin beds. They could be pushed together if it was a couple. I would probably venture to say everybody kept them apart because they weren't overly big, but they were, I will say, bigger than we anticipated, bigger than some cruises, and laid out very nicely. Like you could put your luggage under the bed, and I could just pull my luggage out. I had my little packing cubes in there, get my stuff, and slide it back underneath, and so it was very comfortable. They had shelving everywhere. In the bathroom, they had a real nice big shelving unit for toiletries, and it might sound, trivial, but it was all, it all really helped make it more comfortable, of course.
Would somebody over 6 foot have had a problem with headroom in the lower bedroom area?
I don't know. That's really hard for me to say.
I'm
'cause
sorry.
I don't have a problem, but I don't know. Do we have any tall people that tall? Do you think? There were
I
some,
don't
there's
think-
some guys. but-
Maybe going down the stairway,
Oh,
but
okay,
you
so
might have to
you didn't
duck.
get that cramped.
No.
Okay, head down.
Even the shower was a decent size. I mean,
Yeah,
it was comfortable enough. Thank you. I just popped in. So the meals, we had a daily breakfast buffet, and they did have a little bit of a call to breakfast. They ring a bell, and so we knew it was that's the buffet. It was a buffet style. And what was really neat was they had the buffet for the breakfast, but then our lunches were also on the buffet. So they had, different things for breakfast every day, and then they would serve you your coffee or if you wanted orange juice or anything like that, they would serve that. But yeah, in the buffet they would have, obviously your breakfast. Then they'd have lunches, and you would make your lunch and pack your lunch for the bike ride. So every day you pack a lunch, and they had little plastic containers to put your sandwiches in. So they had breads and lunch meats and cheeses and hard-boiled eggs and apples and little bags of chips and all kinds of things. So that was really kind of fun that everybody made their breakfast or their lunch every day, and then then we'll talk about how that went on the bike ride. The dinners was a call to dinner as well, and that was a sit-down dinner. It was a 3-course meal, and it was phenomenal. She could have been a chef. She was just really good. And every day we'd all sit down, and then she would tell us what we were going to have for dinner, and she would elaborate. I mean, I'm not a chef, so I can't even, but glazed, and she used all those words that you use when you're cooking. And I'm like, holy cow. And you could see some pictures there. I mean, it was really fantastic. Even the desserts were really, really good. Did you want to add anything on that?
No, it was good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was
It was a little too good. Yeah, I was kind of surprised, really. I didn't think the food would be that good. But it was really good.
Yeah, lots of oohs and ahs. Yeah, so here was the bike ride itself. We started out in Bruges. The first day we got on the boat about 1 p.m. and we rode our bikes on the very first day. So they had all the bikes on the road on the side of the barge. We got in, we got settled into our rooms, and then I think they gave us a little bit of a presentation and what to expect. And then we went and got our bikes and found our names and got on the bikes and rode them around a little bit and tested them. And our guide walked around and raised and lowered the seats and made them comfortable for us. And we did have a really good mix of bikes, both regular standard bikes and e-bikes. So the e-bikes they were 28 speed bikes, the regular bikes. We did get a few, I will say a couple of people who didn't really care for the bikes, but I thought they were great. I didn't have any issues with the bike at all. I mean, I don't know how you felt, but
No, I saw.
I think for the most part, everybody was comfortable. The e-bikes are heavy, but I think that's to be expected. So day 2, we went from Ghent to that place right there, Dendermonde. Um, so you can see the mileage we did every single day. Now, I will say that our group, there was such a diverse amount that we were slow in some areas. We had a few people who were, tagging in the back, and so he did reroute us on a few of them. So I don't think we went over 30 miles on any of the days. So he shortened them for us. So what we missed, we don't know. And I honestly, I don't think we don't feel like we missed anything because it was just a wonderful time.
So did you move during the night, or I noticed that you don't start out at the same spot the next day?
Yeah, that's a good question. We did. So there were a lot of times when that the boat was moving. So even the first day, where we ended up in Alterberg, when we sat down for dinner, the boat was moving to Ghent.
Oh, cool. Did you have a view?
It was, yes, all the drapes were open, so you could just see everything going by. It was really, really cool. Yeah. And I would say sometimes we rode in the morning, like we would stay in that spot for the night, and then in the morning we would wake up and the boat would go for an hour or so. And
Yeah, it never moved during the night because captain has to sleep too. But we either moved at the end of the day when we were done biking, or in the morning before we set out to bike. So, which I really enjoyed being on the boat that moves.
Yeah.
Rather than just sleeping on it.
yeah, another. I think I lost my train of thought.
No more than 30 miles a day.
Yes, I was going to say that you did not have the luxury of, say, going 5 miles and saying, you know what, I really don't want to do this. I'm going to go back to the boat because the boat was moving. So once you committed to bike riding, you were committed for the day, but you could stay on the boat, on the barge for the day if you wanted. You didn't have to bike ride. So, and some people did do that. Yeah.
How many hours a day would you say you rode? Like, to do that 20 miles and 30 miles?
It was a pretty slow roll overall. I'd say we did about 8 to 10 miles an hour riding. So
And we always stopped for lunch, for a kind of a long lunch in a cute town, and you could kind of walk around the town and just kind of take a little break. So it wasn't just just ride all day and then cool off at night. So yeah, we did some sightseeing during the day, so it was nice.
And pavement, I take it?
All
Yep.
pavement,
all pavement.
pretty much all pavement.
Yeah, Europe is pretty bike friendly, and there's a lot of bike riders, so they're used to bikes, which is really nice too. So the vehicles are pretty friendly overall. They're just used to bicycles. There's probably more bicycles than there are cars. So this was our route from Bruges up to Amsterdam. And there were places that we stopped along the way. For example, I'll talk about that, but we did make some stops along the way, and I'll talk about that on this next slide here. So, and then here's the ride. It was about 20 to 30 miles per day, relatively flat throughout the ride. And again, we did that on purpose. We wanted to do a fairly simple bike ride so that all of our friends could go. We did cross canals several times, so we had to take the bikes and put them on ferries and then get on the ferry, and then we'd cross the canal and get off to take the bikes off and then bike ride on the other side. So that was pretty fun. One of the ferries was actually a manual. So we had to actually crank it was on a cable. So we had to crank to get all the way across and then crank back to get back. And we had to do multiples to get everybody back and forth. So those were fun adventures, through the day. So that was why it's hard to say how long we rode our bikes during the day, because there was things like that occurred that we weren't necessarily bike riding, but we would probably start about 8 or 9 and be back by 3 or 4, 5. There was one where we actually crossed under the canal. So we actually took an elevator down about, what's it, 30 floors? It was a lot of floors. And there was about 15 to 20 people with their bikes that could fit on the elevator. You go down and you get out, and it's kind of like going through the Windsor Tunnel, although a lot cleaner because it's just bikes and pedestrians. Sorry, Windsor, Detroit. But it is no cars. It's just bikes and pedestrians. So that was really neat. And then you had to get back in the elevator and go up and get into the city there. So that was really fun too. On one day there was a lot of windmills, which is pretty unique to that area. Fun to see. Some of them were working windmills, some of them were not. We did stop at one and spend about 2 hours touring the windmill. It was great. We actually took the stairs all the way up to the very, very top, and Dana's going to go through. We have some pictures, so she's going to go through the pictures after this, and you'll see some of it. But yeah, we went all the way to the top, and he explained how, and they made grain in that elevator, I believe, or in that windmill, and so yeah, that was really, really neat to go all the way to the top and see that. And then we went to a cheese farm, which you think, a cheese farm. But it was really neat. It had a bed and breakfast. They showed how they do milking the cows these days, which is so different than the way they used to, with the machines that they come in and they can tell how much milk the cow's giving and how often they milk that specific cow. They're all tagged and whatnot. So that was pretty neat to see all that. And then we passed through quite a few locks, and that was fun too. Mostly on the boat, always on the boat. So it was really fun to be in that part too. So some of the successes were the weather. I feel like we got really fortunate on the weather. It was actually way warmer than normal. It was the mid to upper 80s a couple of days and the low 90s. So, in fact, at the last minute, I think we all had to repack our suitcases because we had to, go with the sleeveless things. But it was perfect. We had no rain at all. And I think the other success and the big one is just having the whole barge to ourselves. I mean, even just for breakfast, I'd come up and I'd put my little water bottle on wherever I was going to sit down. I didn't have to worry about having somebody sitting next to me because it was going to be a friend. It didn't matter where you sat, or you were always going to be around somebody you knew. So that was really great. And sharing the stories, and it was fun. Playing games at night and whatnot was good too. I think I mentioned bike friendly. Europe is very bike friendly, especially all of it. Amsterdam is it's pretty bike friendly. For us pedestrians who aren't used to it, you have to watch out because they do have a bike lane, and the bike lanes do have traffic lights. So you can't just walk and stand in a bike lane because there's going to be a bike that comes by because there's a lot of bikes. So that was different and something we had to get used to. So when you're crossing the street, you got to go past the bike lane, then the car lanes, then sometimes the train lane, and then the bike lane again on the other side. So that was interesting. We did come across some unplanned adventures, and they were pretty much adventures. We came across a detour, some construction. It's like, okay, the bike route's supposed to go this way, but we can't go that way because the street is completely tore up and it's blocked off and we can't go that way. So that was pretty fun. Then at one point we had an uphill climb, and I think I'll just go to the next page. So you can see our uphill climb we had, yeah. But it was actually fun, you know, we saw it as an adventure. Oh, wow, we gotta go all the way up there now. But, yeah, so that was a success and a challenge, I think, all at once. We did have, nobody made it up the hill. I think there was one person who tried to go up the hill without without walking the bike, and he got about maybe a third of the way up. It was pretty steep. We did have a mix, some of the challenges, we did have a mix of regular bikes and e-bikes, and also a diverse amount of people who rode. I don't know how they do it regularly, but I think the e-bikes, you know, they go fast. And if they get behind someone who's not on an e-bike who slows down, that they have to quickly slow down, and those e-bikes are heavy. We had a few people who fell, we had a few spills. And it was hard to keep the pace that everybody was happy with. We had some pretty seasoned bike riders who wanted to go fast, even though it was communicated that this is a slower type bike ride, still wanted to go fast. Now, there was the option of using the GPS and not staying with the group and just going ahead. And we did have a couple people that did that on later on in the, you know, after day 4 or 5, who decided to go out and just go and use the GPS and catch up with us. And they found us. It went smoothly, so that was good. But that was, you know, it was difficult getting everybody happy with the pace and the regular bikes versus the e-bikes. I don't even know how you would fix that, but it was a concern that we had almost every day. And it was a big group for the guided tour. So I don't know that I even realized that, but the guide said he usually doesn't take the whole boat. It's usually by individuals who actually pay for it, and usually the whole boat doesn't. So we were the largest group he had. But it was fun. I mean, it went fairly smoothly. We just had a few hiccups along the way there.
Question for you.
Yeah.
As you got spread out, were you able to communicate like through cell phones?
We were, yes, we had that. And we always had somebody in the back who was the tail, who could not go. That person had to make sure everybody else was ahead of him or her.
He was a sweeper.
The sweeper, yeah, thank you. And then, yeah. Yeah, and we did have to stop. We had a flat tire, someone had a flat tire, so we had to stop for the flat tire, which was nice. It was actually in a good spot, so we had to do a little exploring in that area, which was, except for the person who got the flat. The guide was good there too, because he helped, you know, get that.
Are you open for questions, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so I was listening to you intently, and you said something about between all the deposits, that the total per person was $16.85, and that was for the renting the barge, and all the meals were included in this. So then your airfare was extra, and you mentioned renting the bike itself was about $100 extra.
Right.
So I'm thinking to myself, and the barge was following along the river or whatever while you're biking from point to point. Okay, so I'm thinking to myself, the last 2 years I've done cycling Europe with the Experience Plus, the name of the group, and kind of the same thing without, you know, it's all on land and all. And about the same amount of time, and not all the meals included, I'm paying probably about 2.5 to 3 times what you paid.
Really?
Yeah, so my question is, how do I get on your list of friends?
I like that. Well, you know what? We are thinking of doing another one. I know.
I did the Spain 2 years ago and Greece last year, you know, but it was nothing, it was quite honestly a lot of miles to go. And, you know, this is probably real avid cyclists and all, so this, but I like that the price there looks very reasonable. And all the meals were included.
All the meals, and they were good meals.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were really pleased with the food.
And you're right too about Europe being very, very bike friendly.
Yeah.
I mean, we're catching, you know, with the bike
Yeah,
So you had the tour company, but that was just the bar. You
Yeah.
had another tour company that you had go to get advice?
no, they did, we just communicated to them what bikes we wanted, and they had them there. Yeah, and that was nice too, because they took the bikes off the barge and put them on the barge every day. We just set them, when we got back, we just put the kickstand on and walked back into the barge and did our thing, and they handled all getting it on the barge and setting them up in there.
And then on the accommodations, each cabin had their own bathroom
Yes,
and shower?
and shower, heat, it came with heat came with heat and air conditioning, had a blow dryer and, yeah, Wi-Fi. I think the Wi-Fi was only upstairs, right? I can't remember. There might have been some limitation to the
Pretty
Wi-Fi.
good though. The Wi-Fi was pretty good.
Yeah, we did have Wi-Fi every day, so that was good.
And you didn't tip anybody?
We did. We
Oh,
did
okay.
do the tipping. We included it in the pricing, so Beth and I took care of it and paid them.
Oh, in
So-
advance.
Well, at the end, yeah, we kept
The
it.
captain,
Yeah.
all four of the people, and then your tour guide?
Yes, and we did have a little bit of a, that was a little bit of a hiccup with the tipping, because we thought the tour guide was included in the price, because we asked, what's typical tips? And we thought the tour guide was included with that tipping, but he wasn't, so we had to scramble to get him some tips, so that was a little bit of a surprise.
Did the tour guide stay on the barge with you or?
He did. Yeah, and even at night, a couple of times, like, at one time there was in the little town we were in, there was a museum, and he took us there, so we just walked to the museum. And he guided us although he didn't guide us very well, did he?
Got a little lost.
That was a little detour, yeah. We took about a 3-mile walk instead of a quarter-mile, I think. We went, he just took us around right by mistake. But we got some exercise, so that was good. And then, what was the other? Oh, we got into this one city, Utrecht, I think it was called. Super city. It almost looked like San Antonio. It had the river down below, where you walk down there, and restaurants, and just real lively, fun place. And you had to get there by bus. And when you don't know the area, and you're only there for a night, but he took us, so he got on the bus with us, and we went into the city for a couple hours, and then came back on the bus, and that was fun too. So I would highly recommend the guide. It was great. Okay, we'll do some pictures.
So some pictures, because we didn't show you too many just yet, but
How many total do you have on this trip?
26.
26.
Yeah, 26 people in a long row. It was a little tricky at times. So I opted for the e-bike because I didn't want to be the last person done at the end of the day, because that's tends to be what happens to me. Short legs, I don't know what it is, but anyway, I really probably didn't need one, except on 2 days. There was one day it was really hot, and that was the day we couldn't stop for lunch very long. We had to keep everybody moving. There's some people in the back that were really getting, exhausted by the heat. And so that day I was glad I had an e-bike, and there was a really windy day, and I was glad I had an e-bike there too. But anyway, you can see in the pictures, like some of these they're almost always paved through, the countryside, small towns, and along the canal. It was just really gorgeous. It was just really pretty to ride. And again, not really that hilly, but I just enjoyed it. It was just, it's a slide thing. Okay. And here's just more pictures of us. And you can see we'll all have our pannier, because we had to put our lunch in there, anything else you want to put in there for the day. And I think that's it for that one. Oh, so here's just a couple of pictures of examples of these river crossings. We did this at least once a day, if not more. But the one on the top right is the one that Kathy was talking about, where we had to crank the handle. You can kind of see that green handle. And that was really a hoot. And then even this one on the left, that one was just such a small little boat. This guy is just like running us back and forth. And again, all of these, we had to do multiple trips because all 26 of us obviously couldn't fit on there. So just a couple pictures to show you what crossing the river was like, or the canal.
Did you have to pay for your crossing?
No, they were all, I think they were all free. It was just part of being in the Netherlands, riding your bike. So there is just a picture of us, Kathy and I right there in the middle, was just enjoying our ride on the boat. And then this lower picture here is a bigger ferry. So the ferries came in all sizes. This ferry kind of reminded me of something like you take over to North Manitou. It was a pretty big ferry, but there's all our bikes. So do you see that guy? Are we gonna point it? See where they're, see our guide, go up a little, there he is, right there. That's Andre. Andre wore flip-flops all week long. he was a hoot. But he was a good guide. There's the tunnel. So Kathy talked about the tunnel. So the elevator, we all got in there. We're all like, woo. And then we went down into the tunnel to go across. It was yeah, we had fun. And that was in Antwerp, which Antwerp's a pretty big city. So here we are. This is what 26 bikes looks like every day when you're out with all your friends. But that's lunchtime. The top left is lunch. The guide said, just stack all your bikes up like this. And so we did that so we could all go hang out and walk around Antwerp and have lunch and just hang out for a little while. And then, of course, how they look like when they're on the boat. Again, that crew, they hauled them off and on the boat every day. And so that's quite amazing. And then they got them off and they just lined them up for us so we're ready to go for the next day. So here's kind of some pictures of what that barge, a little bit close-up pictures of what this barge looked like. So it had a big sun deck on the back, which was lovely. After the ride, we got on the barge, we went and got our beers from the bar, we went up here and sat down and just, it was great. And then we had a little nighttime shot, kind of turned out kind of nice. Here's again, it was a nice, Kathy and I were talking, it was like, it was a very nice barge. It wasn't super new or anything, but it was definitely not old. And so there's the kitchen or the dining and then the bar, and then down in the bottom is that's kind of what the rooms look like. And then we had a lounge upstairs in the inside, so if it was and then some resting location in the back of the boat there where all the ladies are sitting. And then on the left is the captain's quarters where he was, navigating the boat all day, and he had that big navigation screen up. And that captain was really nice. We could walk in there any time of the day and talk to him, and he would talk to you about whatever you want to talk about. He was very friendly and really liked to share what he was doing up there.
Was his name Scooby?
No, his name was Xander. No, not. But so locks, I kind of like locks. They're kind of fun. You really couldn't tell extremely the level of the water moving too much when you got in there, but there were so many different kinds. You can see some of them raised up and down, some of them closed like doors. And actually the one that went up and down on the left, that one got stuck one day and they kept raising it and lowering it, raising it. Finally they got it on the stick. But this is just 3 of the locks, but I think we must have gone through 5 or 6 through the whole course of that.
5 or 6 different types, right?
Yeah, and different days. Like every day, we probably did a lock. But so again, we talked about that tour of that working windmill. We talked about the cheese farm, and so the working windmill, we kind of had a hard time getting some pictures together. But the picture on the left, you can kind of see on the blade, there's like a piece of cloth there. So they were telling us, they were giving us a little tour, and they were explaining they, change the shape of that cloth in such a way depending on the wind. So they can make it a real sliver of a piece of cloth, or they can cover the whole blade. This depends on the day and the wind.
Kind of like a sail, and there it is right there off to the side. But this is the blade here, and then.
Yeah, that was kind of cool. I didn't know that about windmills. And then the cheese farm, again, it's not pasteurized cheese, so they can make it there and not pasteurize it. Nobody's going to make them pasteurize it because they said it tastes better. So, yeah. But anyway, It was
It
good.
was good cheese. We all bought, I think every one of us bought.
Bought one of those little hockey puck things, yeah, we took it home, yeah. It was, so, I'm kind of going fast, but, so typical lunch, again, we made our own lunch in the morning, like Kathy said, but we'd get to these outdoor cafes and we would just tell the establishment, hey, we're gonna sit here and eat our lunch, but we'll buy a drink or a pop or a beer in there, and they said, sure. So that's how we spent our lunches. And then in the left is, I didn't know, but the rivers can have tides. So that was pretty cool. There's a picture of the tides. So, again, whenever we could get all 26 of us together to get a picture, we certainly tried to do that. So we had a couple there. And then in the lower bottom is that's our crew. And they all worked together. The three of them in the middle always did the meals, the serving, getting the boats off. Everybody but the chef worked on that. She stayed in the kitchen while they moved the bikes, excuse me. So everybody pitched in and did everything, and they were a pretty good crew for sure. We saw some of those, and so I decided to group them all together in this picture. They're pretty nice looking whales out there. And then last. So there's Kathy and her co-planner, Beth Kish, and then Kathy and I. And we did it. Most of us had those little jerseys, so yeah, some days we look pretty cool, yeah, on our jerseys. but anyway, yeah.
It is interesting because the regulars there, they don't wear jerseys. They just wear their regular clothes. They wear skirts and just regular clothing. So, but we didn't care. We didn't care.
They knew you were tourists. Right?
We knew, they knew, yeah.
And the one day Kathy was talking about the trail was under construction, and our leader didn't know it. Andre, he didn't know. We got up there and we all looking. And we were like, well, we can't go down here. And they're digging it up, and the guy's on the big crane and everything. And then this local, he came up. He goes, "Wow, that is a problem. Follow me." So we follow the local guy to get us around that big mess and then back onto the trail. So that was just. But those people ride a lot, and they're very nice. It was very nice.
That's when we went uphill.
Oh, is that the same day?
Yeah, that was that day.
It's really hard to push an e-bike uphill.
Yeah.
Were there other excursions to cheese stuff, like did you take the cheese part of the hill? Or was that just included?
It was just, yeah, that was just included, yeah. And I will say that a lot of people did before the bike trip. Almost everybody went to Brussels first and then to Bruges and for a day or two to that city's gorgeous. And some of us even went to Ghent, which is amazing little city too. So, or town, I don't know what you call them there, but, and then afterwards, in Amsterdam, almost everybody, I think everybody stayed in Amsterdam as well for a couple days. Obviously there's a lot to do in Amsterdam. And then from there, people even went more. So like I went with 4 people to France. We went to the Normandy area and toured that area. And I know Dana and 3 other people stayed in the Netherlands and outside of Amsterdam. And some went to Germany, some went to Prague. So people extended their stay even further. So that was one of the reasons why we didn't worry about group flights and things like that, because we knew everybody was wanting to do their own thing afterwards. It would have been hard to keep 26 people together outside of that barge to go, anywhere. Would have been a lot to organize. Would have needed a bus, I guess.
When you were parked wherever you were stopping at, like for morning and night, you could get out and walk if you were not a biker?
Yes.
Well, everybody was planning on biking. I mean,
But if they took a day off or something.
yeah. Well, no, because if you took the day off, you had to ride on the barge. Wherever. But every night we did go out for a walk somewhere. We walked around.
So that you were in a small town or something.
Yes.
almost every night.
Did they have like a parking spot for the barge? I mean, or do you just come into town and you?
The parking of the barge was very interesting. Every day was very different. Sometimes we had to nest up to our sister ship. There was a sister ship out there. It was a cycle tours, but there was a smaller one. And sometimes we had to nest right next to them. And then to get off, we had to climb over their boat to get to the. And yeah, and some days it was the other way. Some days it was just out in the middle of nowhere, and you're like, how did we? And there's this big pole in the water, and we're strapped to it. And it's like, how did we get? Like, how? Why? But it was all different every time. So it made it all more interesting.
You started in Belgium and ended up in the Netherlands at a couple hundred some miles total.
Yeah.
But what is the river? What was the name of the river?
There's a lot of rivers, and there's
Yeah.
canals.
So it just followed this one river.
It was
point to
con-
point.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
went off with tributaries or whatever.
Well, however they stay
Water's pretty
together.
clean there.
I wouldn't go swimming in it. I personally.
Yeah, the
But you come from Michigan, so.
yeah, and that.
Yeah,
map
there's so many
does-
canals and different offshoots, and there's probably even more than that shows on here.
Okay, yeah. That's all.
Do they still use it for commerce? I mean, like transport of goods and stuff like
That's
that?
all they do, constantly, daily. Yeah,
So it's not just a tourism thing, they're taking goods and services along the river.
Yeah, we saw a lot of little freighters and.
yeah. If you like to look at barges and freighters, that's the place to go because there are a million of them there.
Okay, we need to wrap this up, so let's get.
Thank you.